Olympic gold medalist Eileen Gu recently said something very interesting in an interview. During the interview, a reporter asked her to take readers into her mind. Eileen mentioned that she spends a lot of time in her head, and with neuroplasticity on her side, she can rewire her brain daily and tune her mindset towards the future that she wants.
You can control what you think. Like, you can control how you think, and therefore you can control who you are.
And the fascinating part is that there are mental techniques elite performers use to do this intentionally, which we will talk about it later. So what does it actually mean to rewire your brain? I know it might sound like motivational talk, but there is real science behind it. If you are new here, hi, I'm Skye, and I'm a hypnotherapist who works with creatives and content creators who want to overcome their fear of showing up online as their authentic selves. And on this channel, we talk about all things psychology and hypnotherapy. In this video, we are going to break down the neuroscience behind rewiring your brain and why elite performers train their minds very differently from most people. And most importantly, how we can learn from them and adapt them into our own lives. Well, let's be honest, when you watch the interview, I'm sure you are curious about what Eileen meant by rewiring her brain or neuroplasticity. It is a very human tendency to be curious about it because we want the hidden formula. When we see someone perform at an elite level, our brain naturally asks, what are they doing differently? Is there a system behind their success? What do they know that other people don't? In psychology, we sometimes refer this as causal attribution, where our brain naturally tries to identify the causes behind outcomes. When something impressive happens, we don't like believing that it's just random or just luck. We want to believe there is a repeatable explanation because if there is a clear cause, it may be learned. For example, when an athlete wins an Olympic gold medal, people rarely think that, wow, that was random. Oh, he or she is so lucky. Instead, we will assume there must be something behind it. A training method, a mindset, a discipline, or a way of thinking. So when Eileen says she rewires her brain daily, it immediately sparks curiosity because it sounds like she's revealing a hidden mechanism behind high performance. It makes us wonder, is this something elite performers know that the rest of us don't? And that moment, we sense there might be a mental formula behind success and we lean in. Another reason is that many of us suspect something important. Physical ability alone probably isn't enough to explain top-level performance. If you think about it, many athletes are physically talented. At the highest level of competition, most of them have strong bodies, years of training, and similar physical capabilities. So when everything else is equal, what often separates the very best performers from everyone else is their ability to stay calm under extreme pressures, recover quickly from mistakes, maintain focus when the stakes are high, and trust themselves in critical moments. In other words, the differences often come down to mental training. This idea is incredibly powerful because if success were purely about physical talent or genetics, most people would feel like there is nothing they can do about it. But when elite performers talk about training their minds, it creates a different possibility. It suggests that maybe the brain itself is something that can be trained, shaped, and improved. And that idea is incredibly motivating because it means the gap between ordinary and extraordinary might not just be about talent. It might also be about how someone train their mind. At a deeper level, humans have always admired individuals who seem to possess self-mastery. Self-mastery is the ability to control your emotions, overcome fear, remain focused during chaos, and act intentionally rather than reacting impulsively. And from an evolutionary perspective, these traits were incredibly valuable because thousands of years ago, individuals who could stay calm under pressure were more likely to make better decisions in dangerous situations, lead groups effectively, navigate challenges without panicking. So throughout history, people who demonstrate strong emotional control often become leaders, heroes, or role models. We are drawn to people who appear able to stay confident despite criticism, perform well under pressure, and remain composed in stressful situations because it signals that they are not just reacting but directing their mind intentionally. And interestingly, neuroscience actually supports this idea more than most people realize because our brain is constantly changing based on what we repeatedly think, feel, and do, whether you are aware of it or not. In neuroscience, this ability of the brain to reshape itself is known as neuroplasticity. An easy way to understand this is to imagine that your brain is like a massive network of pathways. Every thought you have travels through a pathway of neurons. The more often that pathway is used, the stronger and faster it becomes. And the less it's used, the weaker it becomes. Think about how you learn to drive for the first time. At the beginning, everything feels very overwhelming. You need to consciously think about how to handle those staring, checking the mirrors, braking, and watching the cars and traffic from the left, from the right, in front, and even from behind. Your brain is working very, very hard because those neural pathways are still new. But after months or years of driving, it becomes as simple as drinking water. You can drive almost automatically, and sometimes you arrive somewhere and you barely remember that you drive at all. That's neuroplasticity in action. And the same thing happens with our thoughts and emotions. If we repeatedly have the same thoughts, it will begin to form strong neural pathway, and over time, our brain will keep returning to those thoughts automatically, even if it's not helpful. So what elite performers often do is to intentionally repeat mental patterns that support performance, such as focusing under pressure, visualizing success, and staying calm in high-stakes situations. So when the moment is here, the brain already has strong neural pathway that supports confidence and focus. So if the brain is constantly rewiring itself through repetition, there is an important implication. Most people are already training their brains every single day, but not always in the direction that they want. The brain doesn't distinguish between intentional practice and unconscious repetition. So it simply strengthens whatever patterns occur the most, and this is where many people accidentally reinforce mental habits that hold them back. Let's think about how many thoughts pass through your mind in a single day. Let me know in the comment section. Research suggests that on average, we experience tens of thousands of thoughts daily, and many of those thoughts are not completely new. They are repeated thoughts, repeated patterns. For example, someone might repeatedly think about things like, what if I mess up? People might judge me. I am not ready yet. I should wait until I'm better. These thoughts might seem small in the moment, but when they happen repeatedly, the brain begins strengthening those neural pathways. And over time, those patterns becomes the brain's default setting. Because one of the brain's primary goal is efficiency. Our brain is constantly trying to conserve energy. So when a thought pattern has been repeatedly many times, the brain starts using it automatically because it requires less effort. The brain often prefers familiar patterns over better ones, even though those patterns might include self-doubt, overthinking, procrastination, or fear of judgment. The brain doesn't care if the pattern is helpful. It only cares whether the pattern is predictable and familiar. This is why people can logically understand that a belief isn't helpful, but still feel very emotionally pulled back into the same thinking patterns. This realization leads to an important question. If the brain strengthens whatever patterns we repeat, then how do we start intentionally training it in a different direction? How do we build new neural pathway that supports confidence, focus, and resilience? And this is where some of the techniques used by elite performers start to become very interesting, because many of them intentionally practice mental patterns that reinforce the kind of mindset that they want. One of the most widely used training tool is visualization. Many elite performers spend time mentally rehearsing their performance before they ever step into the real situations. For example, athletes often visualize how do they execute a difficult movement, how do they perform confidently under pressure, or visualize themselves successfully completing a competition. This works because the brain activates many of the same neural circuits during vivid imagination as it does during real experience. Visualization essentially gives the brain practice runs. And when their brain starts to become familiar with that scenario, it wouldn't feel foreign for them when the real moment arrives. Instead of thinking that moment is terrifying, the brain thinks that I have experienced something like this before, even if that experience happened primarily in the mind. And all of us can apply this to our day-to-day situations. For example, you might visualize situations like speaking confidently in a meeting, handling criticism calmly, sharing your opinion online without overthinking it, presenting your work with clarity. The more vividly you imagine these scenarios, the more your brain begins to build neural pathways associated with those experiences. Another powerful tool for rewiring thoughts pattern is journaling. When we write things down, something fascinating happens. Our thoughts slow down. Instead of thousands of thoughts rushing through the mind automatically, writing forces us to organize and examine them more consciously. This creates space to interrupt repetitive mental loops. For example, if someone constantly thinks that I am not good enough, writing about this belief allows them to step back and question this thought. They might ask themselves questions like, where did this belief come from? What is the purpose of this belief? Is it actually true? What evidence contradicts it? You might be able to dig something interesting out of these questions. Journaling can also help reinforce new mental patterns. For example, you can write regularly about what kind of person do you want to become, the belief that you want to strengthen. How would your future self think and behave in certain situations? Over time, this repetition repetition begins to reinforce new mental narratives, and as those narratives repeat, the brain gradually strengthens the neural pathways associated with them. Another way people intentionally shape their mental pattern is through deliberate thinking. Most thoughts happen automatically, but we also have the superpower to consciously introduce new perspective to our brains. For example, when we are facing a challenge, we can intentionally practice thoughts like, I can learn how to handle this. I am getting better at this. This is a learning opportunity for me. At first, these thoughts may feel very unfamiliar because the brain hasn't practiced them very often yet. But just like any other skill, repeated practice and exposure will strengthen those pathways. Now, while these techniques can be useful and powerful, but some people might notice something interesting when they try them. They feel like they are trying to convince their mind of something that it doesn't fully believe yet. For example, you might repeat a positive thought over and over and over again, but internally, there is this tiny little voice that says, that's not true. This happens when we try to program our mind at the conscious level, but a lot of our mental programming actually operates at the subconscious level. Our conscious mind is mainly responsible for logical thinking and decision making, while our subconscious mind stores our beliefs, emotional associations, and automatic reactions. And if those deeper patterns remain unchanged, the conscious mind can sometimes feel like it's pushing against resistance. This is where practices like self-hypnosis can become extremely useful. Self-hypnosis is essentially a state of deep mental relaxation and focused attention. When we are in this state, the mind becomes less distracted by external noise and internal resistance. The conscious part of the mind quiets down, which allows suggestion and imagery to be absorbed more easily by the subconscious mind. And this can make many mental training techniques far more effective. When visualization is done during a relaxed hypnotic state, the imagery often becomes more vivid and emotionally immersive. Emotion plays a very important role in strengthening neural pathways. So here's how you can combine your visualization with self-hypnosis in your own practice. The easiest way to bring yourself into a hypnotic state is to do self-hypnosis the moment you wake up, because at that moment, you are still in quite a hypnotic state yourself, and it saves you a lot of time and energy to bring yourself into a relaxed hypnotic state again. But of course, the choice is yours. You can choose any time of the day to do this visualization self-hypnosis. What I want you to do is to get into a comfortable position, either lying down or sitting down, and close your eyes. Slow down your breath with deep inhalation and exhalation. With each round of deep inhalation and exhalation, I want you to count down from 10 to 1, and when you reach 1, you will feel very relaxed. And then you can start with your visualization. Set one intention or situation you want to focus on in one practice, as detailed as possible. And after you are done, just slowly wiggle your fingers and toes and wake yourself up. Some people find that journaling is easier and more powerful after they enter a relaxed state. When the mind is calmer, deeper thoughts and insights often surface more easily. So here's how you can include self-hypnosis in your journaling practice. There is two ways you can go about this. One way is to go through the whole self-hypnosis and then only start journaling after you are done with it. So you can count down from 10 to 1, bringing yourself into that deep relaxation state, and then just let your thoughts float through your mind. There is no need to answer any question or remember anything at all. Just let your mind flow. And when you enjoy the relaxation state enough, just wake yourself up and start journaling. You will feel clearer and more relaxed after this self-hypnosis. Another way to do this is to bring yourself into a deep relaxation state by counting down from 10 to 1 with each deep inhalation and exhalation. And whenever any thoughts flow through your mind, you can choose to open your eyes for a short while and write them down. Or you can ask questions about the thoughts that just flow past while you are still in the hypnotic state. This will help to uncover some subconscious beliefs that normally won't appear in your day-to-day thinking. Repeating intentional thoughts or suggestions during self-hypnosis can allow those ideas to bypass some of the usual mental resistance. Instead of feeling like you are arguing with your mind, the suggestions can begin to integrate more naturally. Over time, repetition helps reinforce new mental patterns at a deeper level. So instead of consciously telling yourself that I can learn how to handle this, bring yourself into the hypnotic relaxation state and tell yourself repeatedly, I can learn how to handle this when I face any challenges. When you combine these approaches, you are essentially doing what many high performers are doing. When you look at it this way, the idea of rewiring your brain isn't really mystical or magical. It's simply the result of something your brain is already doing every single day. This ability isn't reserved for elite athletes or top performers, but it's a fundamental property of the human brain. So the question isn't whether your brain can change, but what pattern are you practicing every day? The thoughts that you repeat today are quietly shaping the brain you will have tomorrow. That's all for today. If you love this kind of content, do let me know in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video and want more psychology-based content like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!